Reluctant Messengers Unleash listeners, welcome back to version 2. This is episode 2, and we talk about those new psychic tools. I'd like to welcome my very good friend, Candy Sanderson.
As I prepared for this episode, I could not believe how many tools we had. I was updating the charts, and then I realized no matter how many tools I listed, more kept coming and coming. So I made sure to put an ETC and etc. in the chart. Now, I have this fault. Well, I have many faults, but one fault I have is I am always striving for perfection. So I really wanted to list all of the tools. Then I stepped back. I took some advice from my messengers and I got this larger perspective. And then it's like, okay, just embrace that, etc. They tell me it's best to let your imagination flow. And that way you discover new tools instead of doing the impossible, like naming all the tools. In our last episode, we discussed those 4 foundational principles. So now we understand how and why the tools work. Now we're ready for the nitty-gritty, the tools themselves.
Absolutely, Candice. And let's take a deep dive into how some of those tools work. Several tools developed little by little until they finally became a finished product. But I bet they too will change as we change. We know the purpose of the tools. They help us achieve the OBE state, and they also help us to adjust, control, and maximize our 5D experiences. In other words, these tools help us navigate our out-of-body journeys. In our The Reluctant Messenger Unleash series, we use tools for protection and movement, but now we've added healing and communication to that list. So the first purpose that we're discussing is protection. Protection is the reball, the crystalline earth grid, cage of light, prayer meditation, intention for protection. Remember that T in TEA, and the energy bar tool. Now for me, Dr. Joe Dispenza in the toroidal field, I learned that from the Monroe, the reball. But Candy's exercises were all a game changer for me. Candy, you put them all together in an exercise that gave me one unbelievable tool that had to include this power. Will you share that with us, please?
Oh, Donna, I'm happy to. Because we understand those foundational principles for tool development, we can intentionally update older tools to meet our needs. That's exactly what I did. But what we keep doing is polishing those rough drafts so that we will have, hopefully, a final product. But we know it's not final. It will always change. Sometimes, Donna, new tools will appear spontaneously. And of course, those new tools, like the original ones, will also change. But I want to address your question. But first, let's look at Monroe's reball. Reball is resonant energy balloon. It is a dynamic, moving bubble of light, and it's a really important part of my life. Over the years, my reball has changed. I've put a different spin on it, so to speak, but let me explain. I start with the reball with my hands in prayer position at my heart. When I feel the soles of my feet tingle, I know that it's time to inhale deeply because I'm moving that energy from Mother Earth through my feet, up my legs to the center of my body to where my hands are. Then I raise my arms and allow that energy to flow out the top of my head. Now, when my hands are up here, I pause briefly and then I exhale. When I exhale, that energy cascades down around me, all the way down to the ground, actually below the ground. I tuck it in and it comes up my body again. And my arms are always moving with the energy flow. But on the second pass, what I'm going to do is, instead of it flowing down around me, I'm going to twirl it in one direction. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's clockwise or counterclockwise, because on that third and final pass, I'm going to reverse it. Okay? Simple. 3 passes, breathe it up, exhale it out. It feels like a mystical choreographed dance of energy that is in rhythm with my breath and those slow movements of my arms. But easy, smooth, I can feel the difference. But Donna, what you're referring to is another step that I've added. When I learned about torus fields, I realized that is exactly what Bob Monroe's reball is, although he didn't call it that. Look at the picture on the screen. We are in the center of that toroidal field. For me, when I saw this diagram, it made the reball so much easier to understand and easier to construct because I could now see that flow of energy. Let's go another step farther, Donna. I've been a student of shamanism. I've studied under Michael Harner and also medical anthropologist Alberto Villoldo with the Four Winds Society. And Dr. Villoldo talks about an 8th chakra that sits about 8 or 9 inches above our heads, above the crown chakra. And it looks like a spinning globe. It's known by several names. It's the 8th chakra, the star chakra, the soul chakra. And in shamanism, it's called the Wiccacocha. But Dr. Villoldo says that our essence will upload to this 8th chakra when we make our final transition. Until then, if we want to connect with those non-physical realms, we can actually pierce that 8th chakra. And doing so lets us have access to the 5D. So this is another tool. And I have added it to the reball. So as I install my reball, when I reach up above my head, right at that pause between my inhalation and exhalation, I visualize a spinning orb. To me, it looks like a miniature sun. It's twirling. It's orange and red in color. It's yellow. It looks like a sun. It's beautiful. But as I move my hands up, still in prayer position, my fingertips will actually pierce that orb like an egg yolk. It will move my hands so the backs of my hands are touching. And then I pull that 8th chakra down around me. And I continue with the other 2 passes, but now I have the benefit of stepping into that magical space of the 8th chakra. So this is an add-on to what the reball already offers. Protection from outside influences and a way to keep our personal energy intact to prevent it from leaking out and leaving us feeling vulnerable and weak. But now I've pierced that dimensional barrier to the 5D. Donna, there are so many other possible add-ons to your bubble of light. You can put mirrors on the outside, or maybe you need something stronger like layers of steel. And why not? We're pulling 5D energy in, and we know that in those 5D realms, as we've discussed in other episodes, manifestation is immediate. So, Donna, I'm so glad that you've seen and felt the benefit of that 8th chakra add-on. We learn from each other, and that's one reason we're doing this series, sharing the wealth, so to speak. You know, when we look at these tools, I know there are probably as many protection tools as there are people using them. We've just discussed the reball, but next, we see that crystalline earth grid and a cage of light. I'm going to put those both together. That earth grid, as its name suggests, covers the earth, while the cage of light is smaller and much more personal. The grid appears to move because our planet rotates inside, but the grid itself is actually static. It doesn't move at all. The Earth grid is maintained by our cosmic brothers and sisters, star beings. And I wrote about this in The Reluctant Messenger. I also updated that material in a smaller book in the From the Reluctant Messenger series called How clever, the crystalline grid. But like the reball, that Earth grid keeps our 3D energies intact on Earth while preventing intrusions from the cosmos. It also is a communication device, and we'll discuss that part later.
You know, Candy, you said it's maintained by cosmic brothers and sisters, but something really unique happened to me while I was at the Monroe Institute. I was there for MC Squared when my friend Kelly Adams and I were talking about us working out in the 5D. I told her that I would wake up extremely tired, and I remembered I was out there repairing some holes in a grid type structure caused by negative thinking, other influences. But Kelly, as a psychic, said she saw me there on the crystalline earth grid. I was wondering what the name of the place was where I was working. So this is a confirmation. So I'm glad to tell people that, yeah, we do have this grid.
That reminds me of what you talked about in the last session, the veridical truth. You may experience something that seems so crazy and so bizarre, and you think this is not true. And then all of a sudden you get this confirmation. So that's great. Donna, when we look at that cage of light, it moves with whatever we place it around. So if you install that smaller cage of light over your dog and your dog moves, that grid goes with it. But the cage itself, like the Earth grid, does not move around the object. The cage of light looks like a metal crate. But when I first saw one, Donna, it was not that gray metal color that it is now. I'll never forget. I was at a meditation. It was actually a midnight meditation on the east coast of Florida. And I needed protection from another participant. And I watched the messengers, who later identified themselves as angels, install this protective device over me, piece by piece. I saw these brilliant streams of neon colored lights zipping around my body. And where they met, I could feel and hear them connect. But most important is I felt safe. I felt the protection immediately. So those initial colors represent the specific frequencies that are attuned to me. That essence is still built into the structure. Now that the cage of light is built and adjusted to match me and my frequencies, it's ready to use. Donna, you know those Hoberman spheres, those plastic spheres that will fold and then you stretch them? The cage of light is like that. You can expand it to cover your bed. I can expand mine to cover my house. I can even use it to cover a city. On my dashboard, I collapse it till it's about the size of a marble, and I can just carry it in my pocket. Now, let's look at the next two tools, and I'm going to combine them too. We have prayer and meditation, along with intentions for protection. These are based on our thoughts, which are energy, to gather protective forces. Donna, think about the power of prayer and how that's amplified when a group prays. The TEA, Thoughts, Energy, Action formula, explains that process from T to A. We are setting an intention, a prayer, a thought, for safety and protection. If our thoughts are fueled properly, the desired action will manifest. If we are not aware of the importance of proper fuel, the E in that TEA, our thoughts can derail. So just having the knowledge of the TEA formula empowers us. We're the ones that control that T to A. Donna, here's another one. Remember that energy bar tool from Monroe Institute's Gateway program? It is so cool. We start with the energy of a little dot of light, and then we charge it. When it's powered, we can stretch it to a bar or whatever shape we want, and we can use it for protection. Now, what I do sometimes, actually quite often, I make it into a sword like Excalibur. Well, it's actually more like the sword for Peter Pan, but I use it for self-defense, but it can be anything. I sometimes will turn that bar into a magic wand. And then if I'm stuck in the 5D, there's some kind of obstacle in the way, I build a bridge to go over it, go around it. And I have a sheath on my belt, so my sword is ready to use. Donna, what's next?
We're giving you guys so many tools. It's wonderful. I love what Candy's been giving us. So next we have tools for movement, tools that help us reach the 5D and navigate through the 5D. So let's look at them and recap. So movement and navigation. We have, look at the chart. So the first one is slider. Slider ramps up the energy connections. On my dashboard, I put the dot on the slider, that consciousness, to move it forward and backward in time. I also put the dot on the slinky and be able to move it in any direction. By doing this, it becomes a tool. That was so profound and a great description on how these tools emerge, Candy. When we install our POE dot on our tools, boy, magic happens.
You're right, Donna. That's when the magic happens. So next we have Ladder of Enlightenment. This is a personalized tool that gives me quick access to the 5D. Talk about veridical truth, something we discussed in the last episode. My experience with the Ladder of Enlightenment was bizarre and frankly unbelievable to me, and I was the one experiencing it. Yet a few years later, after I had the Ladder of Enlightenment experience, I found validation. Oh, that's not right. Let me rephrase. Validation found me. So, in a meditation, I saw this ladder and it like reached up into the sky, and I hopped on and just started climbing and climbing and climbing. And my messenger said that this was a quote, ladder of enlightenment. When I finally reached the top, I was in this extremely expansive state of consciousness where I floated in this realm of possibilities and probabilities. I met ascended masters. There was so much more to it, but it was just breathtaking. Then, a few years later, someone sent me a book by medical doctor Raji Parti called Dying to Wake Up. He had an extensive near-death experience, and in his NDE, he too experienced what he called a ladder of enlightenment. I couldn't believe it. And then as I read his details of his experience, I was checking boxes left and right. They matched my experience in multiple ways that were just absolutely inexplicable and uncanny. But I actually reached out to Dr. Partee to share my story. And since then, he has written endorsements for the back of my book covers for both The Reluctant Messenger and The Reluctant Messenger Returns. Now, as a tool, I shrink that ladder to the size of like a 4 or 6 inch ladder. And when I'm ready to use it, I just fling it in the air and it unfolds and extends to infinity. I take a deep breath, I run toward it, and I just zip up, and before I know it, I'm at the top of that ladder, and I jump off, and I'm in that unbelievably expanded state of consciousness. In the past, I've talked about my messengers say, why take a trike when you can use it, an energy body that's more like a Lamborghini that will take you to places that are just unimaginable. Well, my ladder of enlightenment is my Lamborghini.
And I think mine, Candy, I love that you have a Lamborghini. I think my Lamborghini is the Merkaba. So I see myself inside a Merkaba. It's a star tetrahedron or triangular pyramids. And I use it as a vehicle. I get inside of it and it starts spinning around. And it's really like warp speed in Star Trek. And I use that to go out into the 5D.
Donna, that's one of my favorite tools too, especially for navigating the 5D realms. We're somewhere, we want to go someplace else. It's like, zap, you're there. And I write about the Merkaba extensively in The Reluctant Messenger Returns. This tool didn't just appear like most of my tools. Instead, it took several weeks to build or to grow. But piece by piece, that star tetrahedron built around me. At the time, I had no idea what it was. And I certainly had no idea how powerful it would be. And like you said, well, I had to actually look up star tetrahedron, but that's two pyramids combined. One is upright, the other one is inverted. When the pyramids begin spinning in opposite directions, then it's ready for takeoff. And at that point, it's no longer a star tetrahedron. It becomes known as a Merkaba, which is a vehicle of light that Archangel Metatron uses. I mean, it's beautiful. I love it.
So when Candy told me about it, she didn't know what a Merkaba was. So I gave her another veridical proof, and you can go online and look up the Merkaba and the vehicle, how the angels use that as a tool. So when I told Candy, she goes, I have to look that up. What is that?
Donna, I was such a novice when I started channeling, but I wouldn't have it any other way. These terms came to me and I had no background knowledge of them. So it made it that much more important and significant and genuine when things like Merkaba comes to me. I don't know what it is. And you have me look it up and it's like, holy cow.
Exactly.
Let's move to that next tool. It's that coiled timeline. And as you mentioned before, the slinky, I too use a slinky because it's a perfect representation of what the messengers showed me about time. They tell me that time is a frequency called a sine wave, and it doesn't operate like an arrow. It's not straight moving in only one direction. Instead, it's curvy and wavy. So that slinky was a perfect representation of it. But let's dissect this just a bit, Donna. So the messengers gave me the concept. Time moves in waves, not a straight line. But I found a tool to match that concept. That's using creativity and imagination to build a 5D tool. Now, I encourage you, the audience, to actively search for something to represent a concept. This is a two-way street. After all, the root word of creativity is create. So use your creativity, your imagination to build, to create those tools. I use that slinky to navigate time, forwards, backwards. I can also stretch time too, just like you can stretch a slinky. My slinky is in a desk drawer on my Psychic Tools dashboard. It's easy to reach. Donna, what's next?
Well, I'm glad you gave them homework. I'm a teacher, so I always love homework. So when you guys come up with something creative, please share that with us and let us know what your creative tool is. But what's next is the brain as a radio tuner. So you have crystal structures in your pineal gland, and they operate in the same way as a crystal in a radio. The pineal gland crystals allow us to move to a higher frequency or vibration. So I just want to tell you, in case you didn't know, a crystal radio works by transforming radio waves into sound using a simple circuit. The antenna on the radio collects radio waves. The tuner selects a specific frequency, and that crystal diode converts the waves into electrical impulses. The reproducer turns these impulses into sound waves that could be heard through the headphones. Now that's the radio. Our brain does it much more efficiently by putting those crystal structures in the pineal gland. After that, we have the radar screen, and it's just like it says. You have a radar screen, and you can look down and you can see where you are in the 5D.
And I love that radar screen. I have a couple of radar screens for several things. But the next one on the list, Donna, is one of my all-time favorites. It's our observer. So if you followed me or seen any of the previous episodes, you will know how important I think that observer is. Everyone has one. It's that observer is that silent voice that navigates your day, commenting on what you do or what other people do. Mine usually are telling me what they do wrong, like how they drive or how they dress or how I dress. But these observer comments are based on assumptions. And you know what happens when you assume. Those assumptions lead us to what Donna calls the fundamental attribution error. So when my observer comes on board, I pause because I realize I'm stepping into those non-physical realms of energy, the 5D. I also have assistance from my observer's sticky notes that we discussed earlier. I can use my observer as a tool, and like a volume control slider on a stereo system or in a recording studio, the slider on my dashboard represents my observer, guiding her, or I should say sliding her, to become more expansive or dialing her down for a closer microscopic view or freeze framing where I am. But that observer is a great tool for achieving an out of body experience and also navigating those subtle spaces of energy. When I find a spot I like in the 5D, maybe one I want to bookmark, I hold that slider still and it keeps me in the present moment so I can look around and set that 5D pin. Now, the next one is also one of my favorite tools, and that is the heart as a portal. Now, my messengers have repeatedly told me that it is the heart that connects us to the other side. And that is why we shift energy to the heart. Recently, Donna, someone emailed me to tell me one of their favorite tools that they learned from me is the brain to heart elevator. And I had actually forgotten about it. But that elevator moves our mind chatter to the heart. But he put a new spin on it, one that I love. When he uses his elevator, he first summons what he calls the elevator of overactivity. So he named it. That's great. He loads his mind chatter in the elevator. Then he pushes the down button for it to drop to his heart space. When the elevator arrives at his heart, those doors transform into a set of French doors. Then he sees the words, "Thank you," written in bold letters as those thoughts exit the elevator and into his heart. He says he feels relieved and refreshed. Now, that brain to heart elevator works because when we shift our energy to the heart, we, our true essence, can slip into that field of awareness surrounding us. That elevator likewise can eject our brain chatter just like a trash chute in outer space. We get it out of our system literally. And then we have the universal energy surrounding us. It takes that energy, recycles it, refurbishes it to higher vibrational frequencies. So it's a win-win situation. In addition to expanding our heart frequency for it to manifest as a portal, we see that heart, that beautiful 3D to 5D connector, serves so many more purposes.
That's so true. What great, great thoughts and great tools. So, Kenny, let's look at bookmarks that you just talked about. And you talked about that pin you put in there. These are GPS pins that we sent when we're in the 5D, and they bring us back to the 5D places we've already been. We learned in our last video about the automatic GPS running in the background. Now that we know it's there, we can capitalize it by setting pins. When you're in the 5D, maybe you met another astral traveler, or maybe you met a guide at the table in the 5D cafe overlooking a beautiful landscape. And you want to go back to that. It's so gorgeous. You can set that pin not only to return to that cafe, but the chair where you were sitting. You can make them stronger by surveying where you are when it happens. So like Kenny says, you freeze that event. Look around and take note. Are there flowers on the table? If so, how many? What kind? So you want to remember that. Is there silverware, glasses, napkins? What the plates? What do they all look like? How large is the cafe? And then how do you feel? What are the temperature and emotions? What's the scene out that window? The more you notice at the time, the stronger your bookmarks become, and they will serve you as a great tool to use those pins. Now, Candy, this brings us to the next one. The honeycomb wormhole you discovered during Starlines 2, and then you had that validated. Each cell of the honeycomb was a wormhole taking you to somewhere. The other night, I used that. I love that. I shrunk down and I got into that wormhole. Not like the bookmarks that return you to somewhere. These take you to new places. So a little different. These become cosmic shortcuts and no directions are needed. So what I like about this one, Candy, is that you didn't have to establish it. It showed up and you were ready to use it. And that's how you have to be in the 5D. You have to just go with that flow, be ready for it. And this is a great example about how our tools progress. Once you understand the basics, more come online. That's why we're doing this series. We just can't believe how many come and how they evolved. Also, some tools are probably right in front of your eyes, but like us, it takes us a while to see them for what they are. So we also have an easy button. That was one of my favorites. I put that on my dashboard. It's the simplest and easy way to symbolize the tool that represents changing perspectives. It allows us to experience events with a different view. Easy. Now, that dot, I use that dot by putting it on all of those. You know, I love that dot. Once, I don't know, I think I took it away from Candy. I use it so much. But this moves my awareness, my consciousness to use it as a tool. So think about how many ways you can use that dot.
In our episodes on the Reluctant Messenger Unleashed channel, I used to talk about the POE, the point of existence, and how it often starts as a dot. I still remember all the time you kept saying, I love that dot. And I would just laugh, ha, 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 until you finally explained why you love it. Then I loved that dot too. You explained that once you saw that POE, that point of existence, your awareness as a dot, then it became a tool. When you put that POE on your coil timeline, that slinky, that dot is a tool allowing you to travel on that slinky and go to the future, go to the past. Donna, that was so profound and a great description of how these tools emerge. So when we install that dot that Donna loves on any of our tools, on our slider, magic happens. But for me, Donna, this was like divine guidance in action, discovering these tools. I didn't realize it at the time. And Donna, you're the one, especially with that dot, that pointed out that these were tools. You know, our tools often change and transform as we do. And like that heart to elevator tool, how it did that for my friend, adding those French doors to the elevator, made that tool more personal for him. So the more you personalize your tool, the more specific they are to your frequencies, and the more empowered they become and you become. So be observant. Watch to see how your tools change, or take charge and change the tools to suit you and your lifestyle. Recently, Donna, I was in a Zoom meditation and I had an out of body experience that involved what I realized in real time was a new tool for movement and navigation. As soon as I hear words like find a comfortable position or close your eyes, well, that is always a cue for me to open up a Word document and start typing because I know I'm immediately going to channel and or have an out of body experience. In this meditation, I slipped into a non-physical form, floating back in time. And from an aerial position, I saw people gathered around a burning fire outside, and I knew it was some sort of a native cultural ritual. And I dropped into the circle and settled in. I remember looking up, and the sky was very dark, but brilliantly sparkling with stars. And then I looked down at myself, and I had slipped into the form of an indigenous male, probably mid-20s, and I was moving in slow motion. The wood in the fire, I could smell it, I could feel it, I could hear it crackle, and the sparks were flying upward. And when that happened, I started following these embers, and my non physical form, my energy body, left the body of this male and connected to one of those embers. And then when I connected to the ember, I picked up speed, and soon I was well above the stars. From that point, I traveled through time and saw part of my life before I took human form. It was amazing. But this is an example of how I receive tools. I have an experience and I use aspects of that experience for future out of body travels. Now I know that I can use an ember of light, of fire, of wood, whatever, to travel through the cosmos to go back in time. And this experience made me think of other items that I had not initially realized were tools. When I have OBEs, I often find myself flitting from one object to another, and I always wondered why. Was this my 3D body's way of understanding like how we're all connected? Was this a way to show how expansive my experience was? I was here, I was there. I don't know. But it's also something that I can also dissect and use as a tool. In fact, I think I'll add a surprise box on my Psychic Tools dashboard. I'll close my eyes and pull one out like the daily special and use it. Let me share a few examples. When I break free from the 3D, I've seen myself in these places. I'll be a scale on a fish swimming. I'll zip over to a dot on the back of a newborn fawn. And then I have become a mite on the pin feather, not just a feather, the pin feather of a condor. Then I'll find myself riding the cosmos on the tail of a comet. And this is all within 90 seconds, 60 seconds. But as I dissect this, the scale of a fish, what a perfect vehicle to explore the ocean depths, and a very natural and organic way too. The mite on the pin feather of a condor, what a great way to explore those wind currents and to have a bird's eye view of the earth. It's fabulous. And again, an organic tool for practicing flight. A dot on the back of a fawn. I can't think of a more perfect camouflage. It's an ideal means to remain hidden in plain sight and observe your surroundings, the woodlands. It takes sitting in silence to a whole new level. Donna, recently I learned that fawns do not have a scent. So if a predator approaches, the mama deer hides her baby and she runs away. The predator smells mama deer, who's smart enough to escape, and the fawn stays safe and sound. The next one, writing the tail of a comet. Donna, you use this one too. I remember when I first met you, it's like you were one of the few people that are like me. You can just grab a hold of a comet's tail and take off through the cosmos. But what a great way to travel. So these and my traveling embers, like the honeycomb network of wormholes that we discussed, they spontaneously arrived to meet a current need. But this is something everyone can do. We use our eyes to see, our ears to hear, but we use our imaginations to boost our intuition. Our creativity primes that pump. It fuels that TEA, thoughts, energy, action formula. Especially with these tools of movement, we see how the energy in TEA works. It's the energy of movement, of emotion, motion, energy in motion. For example, the sticky notes from my observer show me how I fuel my energy in real time. When those sticky notes are critical, it's a reminder for me to step back and pause, which then allows the energy to flow. If my energy is low, it reminds me to change the direction of my thoughts. How? Those beautiful waves of awareness empowers me to make a course correction. You know, Donna, these tools for me are divine guidance in action, and discovering them through you has been a life changer. So many of them were just right in front of me, but I didn't recognize them for what they were. I have you to thank for that. You're the one who pointed these tools out to me.
Well, Candy, it's teamwork. It's two of us together are amazing.
Well, Donna, what a surprise. We've covered much more than we planned. What do you say? Let's pause here and we'll do one final episode to complete the series.
Sounds good to me, Candy. We'll finish up in the next episode.
Make sure to join us next time for our final installment as we wrap up this series on psychic tools and out-of-body experiences. Until then, we would love for you to comment, to like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to catch us on the Reluctant Messenger Unleashed YouTube channel.